And that, as I said, that oil that we filtered, I should say processed, because it turned out that this design will actually do more than just filter. It separates out the water, which for diesels is really important. You have to get that water out of there. Diesels do not like water. They don't run well on it at all. So we did that, and the process did it by itself, really. If anybody asks, it was sheer grace. I have no other, I can't claim anything else. So it removes the solid contaminants, things like, the spices from the Indian restaurants, pieces of French fry, dead bugs, dead rodents. When I made the replacement cartridge for that original unit, and I was still calling it a filter then, it hadn't dawned on me that it was doing more than filtering, even though I saw the evidence of the water being separated out, and in this case a huge amount of water. What I later realized is that it takes out the solid contaminants down to whatever micron size we need, but it also takes out any water-based contaminants, water, acids, salts, anything like that. They're all removed. So what you're left with is very clean oil. If you consider, we'll take milk for example, all right, or a milkshake. Milk is homogenized, so the milk fat is blended into the watery part of the milk, the whey. It is blended so thoroughly and so finely that it doesn't separate out and float to the top. And that's part of what makes this work, is that the oil does float to the top. And we actually draw off the clean oil a little bit below the top so that anything that may have floated to the top just is trapped inside there. So you're just drawing out that cleanest layer of oil. Some large units, say 30 and 55 gallon size unit. And I have put spigots on the bottom so you can draw off the water contaminants that have been separated out. But this is a separation process. So it really is a small scale refinement. It's very specialized. It takes out all the solid contaminants and water-based contaminants, leaving you with clean oil. So when we were doing the original process, and I made that first sample, and we finally filled it, and exhausted it with all that dirty stuff. I made a replacement, took it over to Dave's, and when we took out the old cartridge, he said, "What are we going to do with that?" And I just threw it down in his garden and said, "Let it compost." Well, really, when I say motor oil, and that is the category that we label these under, but you're looking at petroleum oils. You have motor oil, transmission oil, hydraulic oil, non-PCB transformer oil. There are other subgroups of petroleum oils, all of which can be cleaned through this. So, for example, we have a customer in Atlanta. When I met him 4 years ago, he had driven his Mercedes diesel for 11 years on filtered transmission fluid, and it ran like a new car, even though he had close to 500,000 miles on it. Our first tester, who we did a very exhaustive testing program for several years before we even put these on the market. So it's a little bit hard to estimate, but somewhere between 50 and 100,000 gallons were processed. And he was a retired Ford engineer, so he knows what he's doing. He's very, very careful about his testing. So when I spoke to him about this in the first place, it was in terms of waste cooking oil. And he said, "Well, I'd like to try it with waste motor oil." And he did. He has a 2004 Ford diesel that because of the type of injector pump it uses, he was mixing his half and half. The Dodge diesels, they actually use a Cummins diesel, wonderful engine. But in about 1998 to 1999, they started to transition to a 24-valve engine, and they changed the injector pump from a straight mechanical pump to an electromechanical pump, which did not handle heavier oils very well. And that's an expensive replacement. And Dave had one of those, and he put 3 pumps on his engine before he realized that pump could not handle the heavy oils. he had to use a different proportion. See, I run on, my vehicles are older Mercedes with mechanical injector pumps. And there are many other Volvos and Fords, Dodge, GMC, many other things that will run on waste oil. All your old mechanical injector pump engines will run on waste oil. They love it. Whether it's motor oil or vegetable oil, that's what those engines were designed to run on in the first place. So they do very well with it. So anybody can get sawdust and they can make it into a filter. In fact, Blue Ridge Biofuels uses a big sawdust filter. It's very common in the industry. However, there are two major differences. Number one, we pre-treat our sawdust. And what I mean by that, and that's a proprietary treat. We pre-treat it, and that's what makes it separate the water. Anybody can filter through sawdust. It's nothing new. It's been done for a long time. But our treatment, our pre-treat, is what makes it take the water out. So we get our sawdust from about 5 different mill workshops, and we use a blend of different woods, and then we pre-treat it, and then we pack it according to the oil that we're going to be processing. So for example, if someone's going to be processing just hydraulic oil, well, it's a very lightweight oil. So we make a very dense pack with a very tight outer bag, final filtration stages. It's a 3-layer bag. We make a very dense pack with very fine final filtration to handle the light oil. Whereas vegetable oil tends to be heavier with an awful lot of contaminants. So we make a different pack, different woods, slightly different treatment for that. So it really depends on what someone wants to clean up. For example, we have a couple of customers who recycle home heating oil that's been contaminated. So we make extremely fine packs for those folks. When someone has an in-ground heating oil tank, if it begins to leak, they have to have it pumped out and filled with sand or something and inspected to make sure it's not contaminating the ground. The companies that pump out the old oil will find some sludge on the bottom, and that sludge was contaminated oil. So we make packs that will clean up the contaminated oil so it can be reused. It really depends on, the media pack and final filtration depends on the oil that's being processed in the first place. It's a very simple process, but if you consider, well, by now, right? So this design came to me in July of 2008. The first test unit was made in early August 2000.